to the fourth episode of the Tessa Talks To podcast, where I talk to guests about what music means to them. This is the first episode of the second series, and this series I'm going to focus on music and travel. And I'm here with Alexander Sitkovetsky, a virtuoso, world-renowned violinist, and delighted to have you with me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, where did you come from today to arrive here in the Surrey Hills?
Today, we had a concert last night just outside of Zurich, about 30 minutes from Zurich, in a little village called Brugg. Very nice village, I have to say. A very nice concert hall. And we flew in this morning back to London, and we've been rehearsing here for a few hours, so looking forward to the concert now.
As a professional violinist, travelling the world is just part of your life. What inspiration do you get from different countries and people that you meet? Are you able to actually absorb some of the culture where you're in? Because you're in and out of countries sometimes within days or within hours.
I think we never get to absorb as much as we want to, but the lucky thing about our profession is hopefully we get to go back to the same cities quite often. So even if one doesn't always get to do as much as they want the first time round, hopefully when you come back you get to do all sorts of things. I think that's, for me, is important. I think we're in a very, very privileged position as musicians that we do get to travel around the world. I think we are very, very lucky. I remember when I was a lot younger, I spoke to a colleague and really a teacher of mine, and I was so silly. I was about 18 or something, and I complained about being tired from a flight, having to go to a rehearsal. And he said something. He said, you don't realize how fortunate you are, because this profession that you have chosen has given you the chance to travel the world. Very, very often people don't always get to travel so regularly. They might have a few times during the year where they might go somewhere, but generally they are, because of their work, they are more committed to one place. And musicians have this possibility to go to many different places. So I think I've never forgotten that since. And I really try to enjoy as much as possible. Of course, as you get a little bit older, and now I have a family and I have children and certain new responsibilities, and of course, time at home is so precious and really, really sacred. But still, there's a lot of excitement when I'm going either to a new place where I haven't been before, or to a place that I love coming back to. And
so that was quite an early memory when you were 18. Someone saying that to you. Who was it that said?
It was you probably, I don't think you know him. Oleg Kogan runs the Razumovsky Ensemble. He's a wonderful cellist and professor at the Guildhall.
What's your first memory of travelling as a musician? You came from Russia when you were 7?
Yes, around 7.5. Yeah.
Do you remember that travel, that experience?
I don't remember that travel. I remember my very first flight ever, which was not for music. I was still about 5.5. But I remember that, and I think that was my first flight. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that anything else beforehand had been either by train or by car. And I remember the flight very well. And I don't remember exactly my first flight for a concert, but I do remember where we went. And I think it was to Milan. And I was about 6.5 years old then. And
to perform?
To perform. It was my first violin teacher. Somebody organized for her a class concert, so a concert of all of her students. And her students ranged from, I think I was the youngest at around 6.5, till students almost at conservatoire age, so around 17, 18. So
you travelled from Russia to Milan.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we flew to Milan and we stayed there a few days. I don't remember anything, of course, about the trip. I remember that about the concert, and actually you can find this concert on YouTube, hilariously enough, which is very funny. But yeah.
And do you enjoy travelling? Do you have any routines or things that you do on the flight which you think, I've sort of...
Yeah, well, I think this is something that musicians always talk about amongst themselves also, because we do travel a lot, so we're always talking about, what is the best airline for musical instruments, what is the best airline, to get all the perks, because
what is the best airline for musical instruments?
To be honest, I really have... I think they're the ones which you should avoid, and then all the others are more or less the same. But I know that my experience has been different to other people. So I think on the whole, the airlines try their best, but it's very often down to the individual person who might be aware or might not be aware. And I've had people who are the most helpful and recognize the not only the value of the instrument, but also a musician's attachment to their instrument, and how important it is for us to feel, at least, that we are in control of our instrument.
And there's care.
Yeah, and there's care. And then there's been others who really are very, very dismissive, and that kind of can be very frustrating sometimes. But anyway, as a violinist, I cannot complain compared to cellists. They're the ones who are always having their trouble. Exactly. Exactly.
Are there any countries that you are yet to visit that is on one of your wish lists?
Oh, I've been to quite a few, but I think I haven't been nearly enough to Southeast Asia, where I would love to go much more. I think one of the probably main reasons for that is that there is not as much, perhaps, classical music. I think there's so much still local culture there, which is incredible. And I think maybe the time now is still to go there on holiday rather than to go to for concerts. But
maybe you can combine, which would be
maybe. I mean, we've tried to actually. We were in Thailand. There's quite a lot of music going on.
Yeah.
So I've been to Thailand a few times to play and also to have a holiday combined.
Opera is quite big in Thailand now.
Pardon?
Opera is
yes,
growing
opera,
genre.
and then they have in Bangkok there is 2 professional orchestras, and it's really growing there. They have an incredible new concert hall, which was just built a couple of years ago, I think. But still, I haven't been to places like Vietnam, to Cambodia. I haven't been to Malaysia either. There's a lot of places that I would still like to go. And of course, in the French Polynesia area, I would love to go there. I've been to Australia, I think 5-6 times by now, but somehow never managed to get even further. So New Zealand and then all those French Polynesian islands, I would really love to go visit there.
I played in a boat in New Zealand.
You played on a boat? Fantastic.
In Queenstown, years ago.
When I was a lot younger, I used to do quite a lot of music cruises where I would play on the ships. It would be very nice if they would have a dedicated classical music program. Yeah. So we would have to go there and play really proper recitals. I remember playing Bach Chaconne on a boat that was going from here to there, so I kept on walking to this side and then walking to that
the
side.
The motion of the ocean.
Yeah, so I've also played on boats, but actually thanks to some of these cruises, I've been to some really amazing places. Like I had never visited the north of Norway before,
wow.
like really
fjords.
north. Yeah, the fjords, but really way up. We went all the way up to New Alesund, which is basically only populated by penguins and scientists.
Wow.
It's really far up. It's really far up. So.
That's the perk of being a musician, travelling musician.
Yeah,
hugely.
I think it's a great luxury, and we're very lucky to have that chance.
And it's nothing new. I mean, composers, Mozart travelled the world. It's a way to express their musicality, but also gain popularity. And
well, I think touring used to be very different back then. Even if you go back to the beginning of 20th century, when air travel was not yet, was only just hinting at beginning of the 20th century. You would have, Rachmaninoff, for example, would go and tour the United States for 2 months straight, because it would take 2-3 weeks to get there. So when you finally got there, they really wanted you to stay. And the same thing, there's a film, many films, but one of the films about Heifetz talks about how one of his first U.S. trips, before he moved to the U.S. permanently, how he would go on a train just literally from town to town, and just give concerts. I think in some ways the question that you asked earlier, how much you get to see of the places that you go to, I think back then you would see a lot more. I think back then also just the general pace of everything was a lot slower, and so you had the time to really explore your surroundings. Very often, I guess because of the travel possibilities today with the airplanes, and because people are running around and you want to, you're excited to play in this country, then you're excited to have a chance to go there, and it's a constant, going here, there, everywhere. Very often, you leave at the first possibility after the concert is finished.
Especially with family.
And especially with family. I mean, I have learned how to get on the 6 o'clock flight now for about 6 years.
To be back for breakfast.
And if possible, even a school run, if you're lucky. Yeah.
And with climate change, are you sort of becoming more conscious of this? Are you going to be possibly travelling by train and staying in places longer?
Well, there's a big movement amongst musicians, kind of slow. Well, I wouldn't say it's a big movement, but it's slowly starting, and there's a lot of conversations about that amongst musicians.
How to slow the pace down, or extend your stay in one area.
Absolutely, I think the problem is because at the moment the general patterns of musicians' lives are so scattered around the place. I think it would take I guess it would take something from a lot of initiative from musicians, but I think it would also take initiative from the managers, from the concert promoters.
To perhaps coordinate more between...
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. For example, that's what happens when many musicians from here, or from Europe or from America, go to Australia. There's one big for chamber music, for example, there's one big overriding organization there, which also brings other organizations under its umbrella. So when you go there, you know that you're going to be there. It's a long trip comparatively for today's planning, but you go there for 3 weeks, and you know that in those 3 weeks you will have probably a minimum of 9 to 10 concerts, maybe a couple more.
Yeah.
And you just know you're going to be there. And the way that the tour is structured also is that the concerts, you always have a day off in between most concerts, so you have some free time. You also have that knowledge that you're not going to go anywhere, because Australia is far from anywhere, so you don't have time to fly anywhere else to do a concert.
Pop to New Zealand.
It's too far. So you are going to be there for those 3 weeks. You're totally committed to that region, to that area, to the country. And I think it's great. I think if that was possible to do more regularly in other places, then I think musicians would love to do that, actually.
Makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
You absorb the area, you're there, you're present, and you are contributing to that society.
Exactly.
What is your favourite mode of transport?
I don't know, actually. I never thought about it. Until I knew how to drive, I never wanted to drive. And since I finally, because I got my license quite late, because living in London I never needed a car. And then when my daughter was born, I thought, okay, it's really
responsible time.
It's responsible time, and it really does make your life a lot easier, especially because we moved out then into more of a countryside setting, so we really needed the car. And so until I learned how to drive, I didn't like the car. But now I have to say there's a certain comfort and somehow to it. And I haven't yet got one, but I will get, at some point I'm going to get the electric car definitely sorted out, and then I think it's also then the cleanest way to travel. But anything is nice. I just like traveling, so train is good. I think you prepare yourself differently from different modes of transport.
Steven Spielberg wrote a lot of his films driving on the freeway in LA, because it activates the stimulates.
Oh, back then there were not as many cars, so he could actually drive.
Yeah,
these days it's impossible. These days, yeah.
Thank you very much, Alexander Sitkovetsky, for being with me today. That was the 4th episode of the Tessa Talks 2 podcast, where we're exploring music and travel and the symbiotic relationship between the two. Join me next time for the 5th episode, where I will be speaking to another special guest about the subject of music and travel.